The Silent Ranch. Samuel Callahan had long since grown used to the sound of silence. The kind of silence that wasn't empty, but heavy. It clung to the walls of the house like dust, filling every corner with a weight that pressed down on him until his chest ached. Some men might have welcomed the quiet after years of hard work on a ranch. For Samuel, it was a reminder of everything that had been taken from him. 2 winters ago, the accident had come like a thief. A carriage overturned on the icy road to town, his wife pinned, his son too small to escape. By the time Samuel reached them, it was too late. He buried them on the hill that overlooked the pasture, beneath the oak tree his boy once climbed. Since then, the ranch had been nothing but cattle, chores, and ghosts. The evening storm rolled in with little warning. Dark clouds swallowed the horizon, and rain slashed at the earth in long sheets. Samuel was tightening the barn door when he heard it. Hoofbeats, frantic and uneven, echoing across the soaked ground. He froze, hand still on the latch. Nobody rode this far out. Not in weather like this, not unless they were running from something. He grabbed his rifle from the barn wall and stepped out into the downpour. Lightning split the sky, and in that brief flash of light, he saw a horse staggering toward the fence line. Slumped over its back was a small figure. "Hell," Samuel muttered. He ran, mud pulling at his boots, and caught the reins before the horse collapsed. The rider tumbled, hitting the ground with a dull thud. Samuel dropped to one knee. It was a girl, no older than 16 or 17, her face pale beneath streaks of dirt. Blood soaked the sleeve of her torn shirt. "Easy now," he said gruffly, though his hands softened as he checked her pulse. Still beating, though weak. Her eyes fluttered open, wide and wild. "Don't," she gasped, trying to push him away. Samuel tightened his grip. "You're bleeding out. You want to die in the mud, or you want a roof over your head?" She didn't answer, only grimaced as another bolt of lightning split the sky. Samuel sighed, slid his arms beneath her, and lifted her against his chest. She was feather-light, shivering from shock. Back in the house, he laid her on the old leather couch by the fire. The room smelled of rain and wood smoke. Samuel set his rifle aside, fetched a basin of water, and tore a strip of cloth from a drawer. His hands, rough from years of rope and reins, worked carefully as he cleaned and wrapped her arm. The girl stirred again, her voice hoarse. Why are you helping me?" Samuel glanced at her, then back to the bandage. "Because you showed up half dead at my gate. That's reason enough." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering there. "You could have left me." "I could have," he admitted. "Didn't." She said nothing more, only watched him as if trying to decide whether he was enemy or savior. When he was done, Samuel pulled a quilt from the chair and draped it over her small frame. "You'll sleep here tonight," he said. "We'll talk in the morning." She wanted to argue. He saw it in the set of her jaw, but exhaustion won. Within minutes, her breathing steadied, the storm outside masking her soft sighs. Samuel sat back in the wooden chair by the fire, rifle across his knees, though he knew he wouldn't need it. His eyes drifted to the mantel where 2 framed photographs rested. His wife with her hair tied back, smiling as though the world were simple, and his boy with a toy lasso gripped in chubby hands. Dust coated the glass, but he never moved them. Now, for the first time in years, another soul breathed under his roof. A stranger, wounded and secretive, but alive. It unsettled him. He had learned to live with silence, even welcomed its cruel familiarity. This girl's presence cracked it open, just enough for something else, something dangerous, to slip through. "Hope," Samuel grunted and looked away from the mantel. The fire popped, and outside the storm raged on. He told himself it was just one night. By morning, she'd be gone, and the ranch would return to its quiet, hollow rhythm. Yet as he sat there listening to her steady breathing, he realized he didn't quite believe it. The girl's secrets. The smell of bacon and coffee drifted through the small ranch house as dawn spread pale light across the plains. Samuel Callahan stood at the stove, moving with practiced motions. He hadn't cooked for anyone in years, but his hands remembered. The skillet hissed, and the coffee pot bubbled. Behind him, the girl stirred. The couch creaked as she shifted beneath the quilt, and then came the rustle of fabric as she sat up. He didn't turn right away. He let her wake slowly, let her take in the unfamiliar room with its stone fireplace and faded furniture. "Food's on the table," Samuel said at last, his voice low and steady. She blinked at him from the couch, her dark hair tangled, her face pale but sharper now than it had been the night before. Suspicion lingered in her eyes, as though she were still braced for danger. She hesitated, then pushed herself upright and limped toward the table. "You don't have to feed me," she muttered. "I don't," Samuel agreed, setting a plate before her. "But you look like you could use it." She glanced at the eggs and bacon, the steaming mug of coffee. Hunger won out over pride. She ate in silence at first, guarded, as if she expected the food to vanish. Samuel sat across from her, nursing his own coffee, letting the quiet stretch. When she'd eaten enough to ease the sharpness from her eyes, he asked, "What's your name?" "Elena." She didn't look at him when she said it. "Elena," he repeated, as though testing the sound. "I'm Samuel." She nodded but offered nothing more. Samuel didn't press. He learned long ago that some things had to be given, not dragged out. Instead, he shifted the subject. "You rode hard to get here. That horse of yours will need a rest before he can carry you anywhere." Her fork stilled. "I can't stay here long. You're in no shape to go anywhere." Her eyes flashed at that, sharp and defensive. "I've survived worse." Samuel held her gaze, unflinching. "Maybe, but you won't last if you keep running half dead. You'll stay until you can stand without wobbling." For a moment, she looked ready to argue. Then her shoulders sagged. She pushed her plate away and muttered, "Fine." The morning stretched into work. Samuel led her to the barn, where her horse stood in the stall, steam rising from its flanks. He showed her how to brush the animal down, how to check its hooves for stones. She moved stiffly, wincing when her bandaged arm tugged, but there was a stubbornness in her that made him pause. She wasn't the type to sit idle, no matter the pain. "You've handled a horse before," he remarked. Elena shrugged. "My pa taught me." "Before." She stopped, jaw tightening, and bent to tighten the cinched strap as though the words had snagged her throat. Samuel let it be. He knew the sound of unfinished sentences, of memories too raw to voice. By afternoon, clouds cleared, leaving the air sharp and bright. Together, they worked to patch a section of the barn wall that had come loose in the storm. Samuel handed her nails and planks while he hammered them in place. She teased him once about the crookedness of his line, and though he grumbled, a flicker of something warm stirred in him at the sound of her laugh. That night, as the fire burned low, Elena sat curled in the quilt again. Her gaze wandered to the mantel, to the two framed photographs. Samuel never moved. "They're your family," she said quietly. Samuel froze in his chair, the weight of the words pressing against him. He thought about ignoring her, but when he looked at her face, young, weary, wounded, he saw not curiosity but understanding. "My wife and boy," he said at last. His voice was rough, as though the words had rusted in his throat. "Been gone 2 years now." Elena's eyes softened. She said nothing, only nodded, as though she knew better than to press further. Later, when she thought he'd gone to bed, Samuel heard the faint sound of her voice. She was whispering to herself, a prayer or maybe a memory, and he caught fragments. Papa gone." He didn't intrude. He only sat by the fire, listening to the quiet murmur, until silence reclaimed the room. When he finally rose to leave, he paused at the doorway. The girl slept curled beneath the quilt, the firelight casting shadows across her face. For the first time in years, Samuel felt the silence of the house shift. It wasn't as heavy, not as suffocating. It was different. He wasn't ready to name it yet, but it was there, breaking walls. The days slipped into a rhythm Samuel hadn't expected. Elena was still pale from her injury, but she refused to stay inside. Each morning, she rose when the rooster crowed, quilt wrapped tight around her shoulders, and followed him out into the pasture. She limped, her bandaged arms stiff, but her eyes burned with the kind of determination Samuel recognized. She reminded him of himself when he was young, stubborn, unwilling to quit no matter the weight on his shoulders. On the third day, he found her struggling with a bucket of water by the well. You'll split that wound open if you keep at it, he called, striding toward her. I can carry a bucket, she shot back, jaw set, not with one arm held together by thread and cloth. He took the handle from her and set the bucket down. You'll undo the healing before it started. Her glare was sharp, but it wavered. Then she said, softer, I don't like feeling useless. Samuel studied her for a long moment. He knew that feeling. The ranch had nearly broken him after his loss. Every chore a reminder of what he'd failed to protect. He had clawed his way through the days, pretending work could stitch over wounds that never closed. You're not useless, he said finally. You're hurt. That's different. Elena didn't answer, but she didn't argue again either. By the end of the week, she was working beside him, patching fences, sweeping the barn, even helping mend saddles. She picked things up fast, and when she stumbled, she laughed at herself instead of shrinking. That laugh, it carried across the yard, startling Samuel every time. It had been so long since the sound of laughter lived here. One afternoon, Samuel saddled a calm mare and handed Elena the reins. You ride well enough, but you lean too heavy to one side. You'll spook the horse if you don't fix it, he told her. I've ridden since I was little, she said, smirking. Then ride right, he replied, climbing onto his own horse. Come on, let's see what you've got. They rode across the wide pasture, sunlight painting the grass gold. At first, she was stiff, but as the horse found its rhythm, she loosened. Wind tangled her hair, and for a moment she looked like she belonged out there, part of the land itself. When they slowed, Elena grinned at him, breathless. Almost forgot what it feels like to just be free. Samuel didn't smile, not fully, but the tightness in his chest eased. He remembered that feeling too. That evening they sat by the fire. Elena traced the rim of her cup, thoughtful. You never asked me where I came from, she said. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. Her eyes flickered toward the window, where dusk swallowed the horizon. It was a town called Red Hollow. Small, nothing much. A gang came through, took everything, burned the houses, shot anyone who stood up to them. Samuel's hand tightened on his cup. Your family. Her lips pressed together, then she nodded. Gone. All of them. The fire popped, filling the silence that followed. Samuel knew the ache in her voice. He felt it like his own. They'll keep moving, Elena went on, bitterness in her tone. Maybe even come this way. Samuel leaned back in his chair. Then we'll be ready. Her head snapped toward him. You think I'm letting them ride through here without a fight? His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. She studied him, her expression unreadable. You don't even want me here, she whispered. Samuel looked into the flames. That's not true. The words surprised him as much as her. He hadn't planned to say them, hadn't even admitted them to himself. But it was true. The house no longer felt like a tomb with her in it. She brought something back he thought he'd buried with his wife and boy. Elena blinked quickly, as though holding back tears. I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore. I can't keep running, but I don't know how to stop. Samuel's voice softened. You don't stop. You endure. You fight. And you keep living, even when it hurts. Her gaze met his then, and for the first time there was no suspicion in it. Only trust. But the peace didn't last. The next day, Samuel rode into town for supplies. At the mercantile, hushed voices carried news. The gang was seen 2 valleys over, heading north. Trouble was coming. By the time he returned to the ranch, his chest was heavy with the knowledge. He found Elena feeding the chickens, her hair pulled back, her bandaged arm moving carefully. She looked at him and frowned at the tightness in his jaw. They're close, aren't they? She asked. Samuel didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was steady. Close enough. She dropped the feed bucket, fear flashing across her face. Then I should go. I won't put you in danger. No. The word came out harder than he intended. You said yourself, I bring trouble. You bring life back to this place, Samuel said, stepping closer. I'm not sending you out there to die. Not after you've already lost everything. Her chest rose and fell quickly, anger warring with fear. And what if you lose everything again because of me? Samuel's jaw clenched. Then at least I'll have fought for something worth keeping. For a long moment, neither spoke. The evening wind rustled through the barn, carrying with it the weight of unspoken truths. Samuel turned toward the house, his voice low. "We'll be ready." Behind him, Elena whispered, almost to herself, "I hope so." Shelter becomes home. The warning came with the morning sun. Samuel spotted dust rising on the horizon, a dark smudge against the pale sky. Riders. Too many for travelers. He knew before counting that it was the gang Elena feared. He found her in the barn, feeding her horse. The moment she saw his face, her hand froze on the bucket. "They're here, aren't they?" Samuel nodded once. "We don't have much time." Her breath caught, but she squared her shoulders. "Then let me fight." "You're still healing," he said. "I don't care. I won't hide while you risk your life." There was no fear in her voice, only fire. Samuel saw himself reflected there, the same stubborn refusal to yield that had carried him through years of grief. He handed her the rifle he'd taken down from the wall. "Stay by the house. Keep your eyes sharp. Don't fire unless you mean it." By the time the riders drew close, Samuel had the ranch set. The cattle were herded behind the far fence, the barn doors chained, and the porch stacked with ammunition. He stood tall, his hat pulled low, the rifle steady in his hands. Elena knelt near the window, peering out with eyes that burned like coals. The gang came thundering up, half a dozen men in dust-stained coats, their leader at the front. He was broad-shouldered, his face marked by a scar that dragged his mouth into a sneer. "This your place, old man?" the leader called, reining in. Samuel's voice carried steady across the yard. "It is. We're taking what we want. Move aside, and maybe we'll leave you breathing." Samuel leveled the rifle. "You'll take nothing but lead if you try." The man laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. He lifted his hand, and the gang began to spread out. That was when the first shot cracked Elena's. It tore through the air, striking the dirt inches from one rider's horse. The animal reared, nearly throwing its rider. The gang cursed, startled by the unexpected fire. Samuel seized the moment. His rifle barked, dropping the nearest man from his saddle. Chaos broke loose. Gunfire thundered across the ranch. Samuel moved with the precision of years, handling both rifle and rope, his shots calm, measured. Elena fired from the window, forcing the men to duck for cover. The scar-faced leader shouted orders, but Samuel knew the land better than any of them. He shifted from fence to trough, using every scrap of cover, drawing them into positions where his shots found them true. Two men broke for the barn, but Samuel cut them down before they reached it. Elena's bullet grazed another's arm, sending him howling back toward his horse. Finally, only the leader remained, crouched behind his mount, rage twisting his scarred face. "You think you can stand against us?" he bellowed. "I already did," Samuel answered, voice cold. The leader roared and fired wildly, bullets splintering the porch rail. Samuel stepped forward, unshaken. His rifle cracked once more, and the leader staggered, clutching his chest. He fell into the dust, his sneer fading into silence. The ranch was still again, save for the wind. The gang survivors spurred their horses and fled, their courage broken. Samuel lowered his rifle slowly. His chest rose and fell with deep breaths, but his hands were steady. He turned toward the house. Elena stood in the doorway, rifle in hand, her face pale but resolute. "You fought well," he said. Her lip trembled, and she set the rifle down carefully. "We did it." Samuel nodded. For the first time in years, he felt not emptiness but pride, not just in surviving, but in protecting something that mattered. Later, when the bodies were buried and the ranch quiet once more, Samuel and Elena sat on the porch steps. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. "You could have sent me away," Elena said softly. "I thought about it," Samuel admitted. "Would have been easier, safer. Then why didn't you?" He looked out across the pasture, where cattle grazed in peace. "Because you remind me life's still worth fighting for." "I'd forgotten that." Elena blinked hard, swallowing back emotion. "You gave me a place when I had none. And you gave me back my heart," Samuel said, the words quiet but sure. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence that settled between them was no longer heavy with grief. It was full, alive, carrying the promise of something new. As twilight spread across the land, Samuel rose and offered his hand. Elena took it, and together they stepped down into the yard, the ranch stretching wide before them. Tomorrow there would be fences to mend, cattle to tend, and memories to carry. But tonight, for the first time in years, Samuel felt whole. The ranch was no longer a tomb. It was a home, and he was no longer alone.